All right. Well, it's another Thursday, which means we are traveling back in the timey-wimey Wayback Machine 20 something odd years ago for more stories of a dorky Matt, and I continue to do weird things with my hands. Anyway, thanks again for joining me this week. When we last left off, we were in Disney World doing tour, and that's where we're going to pick up this week. We almost wrap it all up. There is a lot that happens here. Just, when trying to figure out, like, what would you title something like this, I had thrown around ideas for the book. Matt's an Idiot was one of them. Look at This Dork was another. The reason I called it Teen Angst is I think everybody can agree with it. Everybody goes through weird things in high school, things that were wildly important then we could just, like, kind of cringe at now or laugh, or we just, like, remember stuff. And so that's kind of where this chapter for sure just kind of takes off. Is just now it's... I said tour changes everything, and tour does. But anyway, let me rub my hands together. Thank you again for joining me. And the other thing about this, it's sharing this and then having conversations with people who have watched them, whether they're good, bad, indifferent, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's how it was, or whatever. The other thing that it does is it really continues to inspire me to write. And I've taken up writing zombie stories again ever since doing these videos. So it's just wild. And so in that, I guess there's also a thank you to you, whoever's clicking on this now, because that's part of the journey. And I don't know, it's just kind of neat, I guess. Anyway, enough of the rambling. Let's kind of just get started on the stories of a dorky 15-year-old from Arizona. I know you're getting twisted, and you can't calm down. When we arrived at MGM, we planned for lunch, but before we did that, we wanted to take in a couple attractions and sights. At one point, we ended up with some more of the choir people, and it was here I bumped into Diana and Jen K. They turned around to say hi, and Meg and I said hi back. Jen gave us a look up and down and smiled. She turned to Diana, who ended up telling me later what happened. Young Matt called himself a cutie. Was there ever any doubt? Diana asked. Apparently, this specific little piece of news made the rounds through Downbeat and Acapella, as Jen and Diana mentioned it to others they came across, another piece of information I didn't know until well after the fact. Our group all made our way to Star Tours. While I am not, admittedly, a huge Star Wars fan, Blaine and other members of the group are. So, of course, when at Disney, there are things that you feel inclined to do. While we skipped Splash Mountain on this day, we weren't going to skip out on this one. Blaine, Zan, and David took in the sights, and we sat down and enjoyed the ride, our group all in a row together, and once out, complete with us making sound effects and comments, we decided lunch was probably a good idea. Vouchers in hand, we all grabbed food and sat down, finally taking a chance to sit and relax. As we ate, though, something seemed to be bothering Meg. As we finished eating and clearing the table, she told me she was feeling claustrophobic and needed a minute, so we sat down together, just for a little while, before she excused herself, running to a nearby bathroom. She okay? Blaine asked. She said she was feeling a little claustrophobic. I responded. Aaron and Corey offered to give her a few minutes and then go check on her. When they emerged, Meg took my hand and we continued walking through the park, but I was just wanting to follow Meg's lead. We decided not to do too many rides, but we did as a group decide to do one of those little backstage tour things. As we were on it, though, Meg and I stood in the back, and toward the end, as we were walking out, she gripped my hand and pulled me aside. "Would you be okay if we went back to the hotel?" she asked. "Yeah, of course. Still not feeling great?" She shook her head. "Okay." I turned to the group. "Blaine, guys, Meg's not feeling well, and we'll head back to the hotel so she can rest." "We'll walk you guys back to the shuttle," Aaron said. As we made our way, we actually bumped into a couple of the trip chaperones, and they thought it would be smart for us to go to one of the first aid stations. They offered to take Meg, and it was here that I pushed to go with, and Aaron offered to come. "This way, we're still in groups of 2, Aaron said. "We'll meet up with you guys in a bit." Blaine nodded, and we decided to try and meet up at one of the rides, an Aerosmith rock and roller coaster that had just opened, and we'd meet just in a few minutes. The chaperones, Meg, Aaron, and I, went off to one of the park's first aid stations, and when we got there, Meg broke down. She explained that her feeling of claustrophobia just came from being around people all the time. She felt like she just needed some time to relax. Her wanting to go back to the hotel would allow a little bit more of time for just her to be on her own, and the nurse offered one of the beds in a quiet spot if she needed it. Meg said that might help. I offered to stay. "We'll stay," said one of the chaperones. "But," I started. "You go enjoy the park." This was the other chaperone. "This is why we're here." I looked at Meg and then Aaron. "I'm going to get Aaron back to the rest of the group, but I'm coming back." "We might be back just to see how she is," Aaron added. Meg nodded. Aaron and I gave her a hug, and out we walked. We went back to find the group, but they were gone. Aaron and I wondered where they went, and then started to scour the park. Admittedly, maybe not the best decision, because this is before cell phones, and we should have just stayed put. But we were going a mile a minute in our brains. "Where'd they go?" she asked. "They might have gotten on a ride. We just can't find them yet," I responded. About after a half hour of searching and not finding them, we went back to check on Meg, who had fallen asleep. We went back to our search, and again ended up with absolutely no idea where they were. "Do you think they left?" Aaron asked. "I don't do well with being left." "No, I don't think they did. They're on a ride or they're getting food," I said, but I could feel myself getting frustrated. After more looking and still nothing, we checked in one more time. "She's still asleep," one of the chaperones said of Meg. "When she wakes up, if she wants to go back to the hotel, we'll take her." "Okay, but I'm going to try and get back," I said, trying to keep my exasperation under wraps. I knew in my brain something was happening at that moment, and that I was going to have to try and figure it out. Aaron and I walked back to the Aerosmith ride one more time, and as we did, we ran right into my dad and a group of choir kids. "Dad, I can't find Blaine and everyone," I said. "Meg's at the first aid station with some of the chaperones. I need to get back to her, but I need to get Aaron back to Blaine." My dad paused for a second. "Kid, take a breath." "Dad, listen." "Kid, you listen. We'll find Blaine, okay? But first, get in line with us." "Dad, I'm not in the mood for a roller coaster." "I know. Just trust me." My dad gave me a look. Not a chaperone look, and not a look of him being my dad telling me I'm wrong. He gave me the look that he knew I needed something and I didn't know it. "Matt, let's do it," Aaron said, giving me a smile. "And when we're done, we don't have to find Blaine. We'll go back and wait for Meg." I sighed and agreed, and Aaron wrapped her arms around mine. My dad asked what had happened. I explained everything, while touching base with the choir people like Kara and Mark and Kiki, who were in line with my dad. As we walked through the ride line, we came into the area to get ready, which was a hologram of the rock band Aerosmith in a recording studio welcoming you. The ride was built like a Corvette that fired you into a tunnel on a green light, and as we watched, you just saw the ride take off, and a lot of screaming as Aerosmith music played in the background. The ride goes from 0 to 60 miles an hour in 1.8 seconds, my dad said, smiling. Wait, what? Aaron asked. Oh, shit, I said. We piled into the convertible of the ride, Aaron sitting next to me, my dad in front of me. We got buckled in, and there were speakers on each side of your seat. You ready? I heard the attendant ask. Admittedly, now I was feeling just a little bit excited. By the time my brain registered the green light to tell us the ride started, we were in our second loop, with Love in an Elevator blaring through the speakers. Aaron and I let out a scream as we blazed through the ride, which lasted just about a minute and a half. She grabbed my hand and I could hear my dad yelling in front of all of us. Burst out laughing. This is cool as fuck, I said, and as the ride ended, we got out. So? Dad asked, smiling. Yeah, that. Okay. All right. I needed that, I said, nodding. Good. All right. Let's go see if we can find Blaine, my dad replied. We stepped out of the ride area and as we did, found a series of benches and a waving Corey. Blaine, David, Zan, and Corey were joined by Emily and Kate, and my dad said bye, saying he'd see us at the awards show, and I yelled thank you to him. Aaron and I walked up to the group, and Aaron went right up to Blaine. Where'd you guys go? I asked, the ride adrenaline now being replaced with a bit of frustration. We got in line, but then we went and got something to eat. We missed you, Blaine said. Okay, well, I gotta get back to Meg, I replied, a bit short. Meg'll be okay, Kate said. The group explained they ran into Kate and Emily and told them about Meg. Matt, Emily started. I don't care, I said, cutting off Emily. I was tunnel visioned. I'm going back. I turned on my heel and made my way back to the first aid station. Rules be damned, I was going back. When I got to the first aid station, I opened the door, stepped in, and there were no chaperones. I was deflated. You're back, a happy-sounding nurse said from the desk as she looked up. Yeah, I said, looking around. She left about 10 minutes ago. She said she's going to see you at the awards ceremony tonight. She and the chaperones left but wanted to let you know because they knew you'd be back. I smiled, slapped the counter. Thank you so much. You're welcome, sweetie. I turned around and walked out of the station and right into the group. She okay? Corey asked. She's going to be at the awards ceremony, I said, frustration having instantly left. Great. Let's go get something to drink and we'll get over there, David added. I nodded and tapped Emily on the shoulder, pulling her aside. I'm really sorry for snapping at you. It's okay, Emily said, smiling. I'm glad Meg's okay, and I know you. You were worried about her. Don't even worry about it. Emily slipped her arm into mine, and after getting something to drink and a little bit more looking around, we headed to the Theater of the Stars, which at this point was a party. All the assorted schools who were in attendance for the music festival had their spots, and music was pumping through the speakers. As we walked in, we saw Meg waving at our group, standing on a pair of seats, having saved a spot for us. We walked up, and as we got settled, Emily and Meg started dancing together. A photo I admittedly snapped because of how much the two of them meant to me, but also it was just a hell of a party. Once they were done dancing, Meg climbed over the chair and stood next to me. They said you kept coming back for me, she said. Yeah, it took a little bit to find everybody, I replied. Sorry, I wanted to be back sooner. Meg smiled and kissed me, and as everybody else started to file into the theater, the award ceremony got underway. It was also where we quickly realized that James Bowie High School was going to be our main rival, a school we'd never met, but when it came to who won each category, it was us or them. Downbeat won for classical, we came in first for jazz, but a cappella and chanté came in second to Bowie. band and orchestra traded winds with them as well, but we let out a huge cheer when our color guard, which is really kind of just all of 3 people, and included Aaron and Corey, won first place. As Corey and Aaron ran on stage, a "We are MP" chant broke out. As the ceremony began to come to a close, word was coming through the chaperones, Wendy and Mr. Werner, that room check was at 10 p.m., and while the park would be closing soon, we could still hang out or go back to the resort, play games, get something to eat, hit up the pool, whatever. Meg and I noticed Wendy and Mr. Werner with any trophies or awards in hand leaving the theater. "Come on, let's go," she said, smiling, grabbing my hand. "We'll beat everybody back." We shouted at the group we were leaving and ran to the shuttles, just behind Wendy and Mr. Werner. As we climbed on board and sat down, they turned to see us, and Werner immediately noticed us holding hands. "Choir boy," he said, leaning in, "you will unhook your hand from that of my innocent band minion. I will not allow you to infect her with your choirness." Meg squeezed my hand and rested her head on my shoulder, smiling. I grinned at Mr. Werner. Maybe I will just trust her judgment, he said. Wendy was stifling laughter behind him. When we got back to the resort, Meg wanted to go swimming, so we changed and I met her at her room. As the rest of the group got back, we ran down to the pool to relax and play, grabbing a quick bite to eat as well before room checks. I walked Meg and Corey back to their room while Blaine walked to Aaron. Meg and I had one more hug and kiss goodnight. I walked to my room again, digesting the events of the day, the picture with Emily, the kiss with Meg after the roller coaster, and how I felt when I couldn't be with her when she wasn't feeling good at all, played in my head and over in my mind. I had enjoyed the time I had spent with Meg and could only think the tour wasn't turning out at all how I had expected it to. Blaine and I met up, pouring drinks from our 2 liters once again, and Michael and Lawrence told us about their day while we continued having Radio Disney play in the background, our nightly routine. I grabbed my voice recorder, recording another quick entry where I also knew I had to address something. I'm starting to worry. I'm starting to get strong feelings for Meg, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, I said into the recorder, signing off and knowing that whatever was happening on tour, the only reason it could ever be bad was because I had a swirl of emotions. As I put the recorder back in the bag, it was just past 11, and we'd all made it through room checks. Our foursome continued to listen to music, thinking it was time to turn in. Then, we heard a knock at the door. So I stand accused and plead guilty to the crime. You can lock me away if you want. Michael opened the door, and the voice on the other side was very familiar. "Hey guys, is Matt here?" It was my dad. "Yeah, Dad, what's up?" I asked, as Michael stepped to the side. "Hey kid, you got a minute?" "Oh yeah, sure, what's up?" "Come on out." Blaine, Michael, and Lawrence looked at me, and I shrugged, stepping out. "It's okay, he'll be with me. He'll be right back." The guys closed the door, and Dad motioned that we should take a walk. "Don't worry. Wendy knows I was coming to find you." "Is everything okay? Mom and Sarah?" I asked. "Oh yeah, they're fine. That's not this." "Did I do something?" "No. Wendy wanted me to come talk to you." "Okay. So I need to tell you something. Earlier today, Katie started to have a bit of a breakdown. Wendy just told us all when we got back, but it has to do with Blaine." "Wait, what?" "Katie was with one of the groups, and she kept having breakdowns, crying about Blaine and things like that, and she's starting to threaten to hurt herself over Blaine." I stood stunned for a second. I mean, I guess she's been acting weird since we got here. She said some stuff to Aaron about Blaine, I said. "So because she's saying stuff like that, she's going to be spending the rest of the trip with Wendy. But Wendy wanted me to talk to you so you can do a couple of things. One, we thought you might want to talk to Blaine about it. He's not in trouble. It's nothing he did, but we're also going to try and keep Katie away from your group as much as possible. Okay. And that's the second thing. Wendy doesn't want this to affect you guys. She's going to talk to Blaine tomorrow. She might talk to you. I think she's talked to Werner. You guys just enjoy your time, and Katie's handled. Does she want me to talk to Katie or hang out with her? How can I help? I asked. She wants you to enjoy the tour with your friends. She knows you would talk to Katie, but right now, no. Also, Pam's taking it really hard. So Wendy will talk to her and you can talk to her, but for right now, that's where we're at. I sat for a second. How bad is it, Dad? It's not great, he answered. Yeah, well, I get that, but like hurting herself or what? It's not great, kid, he repeated. And it's all I needed to know. I let out a sigh. If I can help, I know, and Wendy does too. But this is your trip, and we're the adults. I nodded. Thanks, Dad. You got it. Go ahead, get on back. I'll let Wendy know I talked to you. Okay, I'll go talk to Blaine right now. If you want to talk with him outside the room, you can. I'll be around to cover for you guys. I opened the door and called Blaine, who came out. We walked around the corner, grabbed a soda from the soda machine. Bro, he asked. I handed Blaine a Dr. Pepper. I got a Coke. I filled him in on everything my dad told him, or everything my dad told me. And Dad reiterated Blaine wasn't in trouble. All Wendy might want to do is talk to him about what's going on. Just to talk. We knew the plan was the big group picture at Epcot the next day, but Wendy would be there to keep things smooth. Following a thanks and a goodnight to my dad, we went back to the room and got ready for bed. What a fucking day, Blaine said. I know, but I'm in your corner, I said. Put my hand on his shoulder. We'll have a good time tomorrow. Fly the great big sky. See the great big sea. Kick through continents. Busting boundaries. 6:30 a.m. the phone rang, and I launched over Blaine, straddling him as I grabbed the phone off the hook, and he looked at me with surprise. It was Mickey again. Slam! Fucking mouse says it's time to get up, I said. Can you please get off me? Blaine asked. Why? I kind of like the cuddling, I said, blowing him a kiss. Blaine playfully shoved me off the bed, of which I landed on the floor with a thud, laughing. Blaine kicked at me from the bed as I got up, and Lawrence and Michael grumbled something, but we all started moving. We did a quick inventory. Blaine noted he was down to just 3 cans of Dr. Pepper, and I was just left with a little bit out of the 2-liter and still that A&W from Meg. We walked down to the cafeteria early and immediately started to play games in the arcade. Blaine and I found and played Golden Axe, and we could see Meg and Corey, Aaron, and Emily walk in. We waved at them. Everyone had plans to head to the Disney Quest Interactive Adventure that night, a huge arcade experience. And we also planned to try and watch the parade in the Magic Kingdom, so it had already felt like a busy day. As Meg walked up to watch us play, she greeted me by wrapping her arms around me. A hug I happily returned. Ready for breakfast, she asked. Blaine and I finished our game, and we all grabbed breakfast, sitting at a table together. And it was here where we started to notice all the girls' buttons on their shirts or jackets. Aaron had a Cinderella, Emily had an Aurora, Meg had Belle pinned to the top of her dark blue tank top. The girls had all picked out different Disney princesses of this of fun like identity game. What also matched their personalities. Oh, so Blaine's a Prince Charming, I asked, laughing? That's definitely a stretch. Oh, ha, very funny, fucker. That would make you the Beast, he responded, and everybody laughed. I mean, I always figured I was Quasimodo, I responded. Who would Matt be? Corey asked. And what followed was a bit of silence. Jiminy Cricket, Meg said. Helpful, trying to keep us out of trouble. Short as fuck, Blaine said. No, that fits. I nodded and accepted it. I'm perfectly cool with being Jiminy Cricket. We were joined by Kate, Xandar, and David, Eric, for breakfast, and then after a little bit of bullshitting around, made our way to the shuttles for Epcot. When we got there and started to map out our route, the plan was to take a picture at the big globe thing as a choir, band, and orchestra. We did so, and the photo that I was able to find, admittedly swiped from my friend Whitney's Facebook. Our group is kind of like right there in the middle. Standing by Blaine, Aaron, Corey, and Emily, I'm standing behind Meg with my arm around her waist, and she has her head up against me. After the group as a whole broke up, we ran into Ilea, a friend of ours from band and the little sister of another friend of ours, Eric, who asked to take a photo with our group, which is one of 3 that I have from that day. Her and I were always friendly. She grabbed my hand around her waist as Meg and I held hands, and we snapped the photo. She thanked us, took off running, and we as a group wanted to figure out what to do next. We decided to walk through a couple different areas of Epcot, making our rounds, and we wanted to head to Norway for Zan, who at this point was quite a few days off of his meds and skipping through the park in a Mickey wizard hat. With Zan and David off running, Blaine, Aaron, Eric, and Corey decided to look at other exhibits. Our group then made the decision that splitting up for a bit would be a good idea. We finalized our plan, again by agreeing to meet at Magic Kingdom for the parade that night. As everyone went in their separate directions, Meg interlaced her hand with mine. In an interesting twist, one that was definitely welcome, Meg and I were alone. A little different intro for this chapter. Ooh, something's got a hold on me now. Meg and I began to walk through the different nations of Epcot, going through Canada and the United Kingdom, before running into my dad in France. And my dad was all smiles. I'm eating my way through the world, he said happily. Coffee and a snack here. I'm going to go to Italy for lunch. How are you doing? We're good, Dad. Glad you're having fun. Are you glad I signed you up as a chaperone now? I asked. This is the best, thanks, kid, he said. He wished us well as we kept walking, and once we got to Japan, Meg began to tell me stories. She explained that she and her family had lived in Japan for a time and talked about things she remembered. She told me about things in the shops. We talked about the architecture, and as we found little things, I would offer to buy her a souvenir. She also helped me pick out a kimono that would be a gift for Sarah when I got home. We bought snacks, and I was happy to try anything she found, and I bought us some drinks. As we stood outside, there was this area where you could get a little umbrella to keep out of the sun. They just asked that when you were done with it, just, put it back. Meg shaded us as we talked, and I offered to throw our drinks away. She said she would stand over by a light pole and wait for me. When I turned around and saw her, I stopped dead in my tracks. She had a red sweater tied around her waist. She was wearing her dark blue tank top. Her hair was back in a ponytail, and the umbrella was up as she was looking off to her side. I took the disposable camera out of my pocket that I had brought on tour with me and snapped a photo. And I knew that this meant I was going to have to really figure things out, because here I was, cannonballing. No fear, just the moment, and I was lucky enough to capture it. I didn't even question it. I fucking knew. I had fallen in love with Meg. I put the camera back in my pocket and walked up to her. She smiled and kissed me, and I was wondering what was going on in her head and in her heart. We'd talked before about how she was in no rush for a relationship, but Tour had felt different the entire time. Seeing her there, in that moment, I just melted. I was thinking, do you want to take the ferry back? She asked. We could go to MGM and do some stuff there since I missed out yesterday. I'd really like to do the Indiana Jones thing with you. Yeah, let's do it, I said. This is a fucking date, I thought to myself. She took my hand and we caught the ferry, sitting next to each other. We talked about the day before, how she was feeling, plans for spring break when we got back. We talked about why her character was Belle and how she felt performing with the band. When we got off the ferry, we crossed through the park and onto the shuttle, made our way to MGM. While we did a couple more movie tours, the Indiana Jones attraction, and anyone from choir, band, or orchestra who saw us and asked, "Hey, what's going on?" we just smiled and kept going. But I knew, at least for me, that Tour had changed everything going forward. Whatever that meant. Good, bad, or neutral. After spending a few hours together, and as it got into the evening, we reunited with the rest of our group at the Magic Kingdom, ready to watch the parade. While there, I snuck away with Corey and into one of the gift shops. I found a little glass collectible of the Enchanted Rose from Beauty and the Beast, and I bought it. Will you give this to Meg tonight? I asked Corey. Yeah, I will, Corey responded with a nod and a grin. I bought it, signed it to her on the box, and Corey said she would take care of it. We returned to the group to watch the parade. Meg and I stood together, my arms around her, and Blaine looked over, and I caught his eye. I mouthed, "Later," and he nodded. But I could tell he was smiling. He stands like a statue, becomes part of the machine. When the parade was over, we all jumped on the shuttle back to the hotel. The last adventure of the day was that everybody was going to regroup before heading over to the Disney Quest Interactive Adventure, which at the time was this 4-story arcade. Once we got back to the hotel, there was about a minute or so to change if you wanted to, and then we all met up at the bus pickup. When we did, our group was getting ready to get on the shuttles when I looked over and I saw Pam. She was standing with a group of people from Downbeat, and Becky, Miriam, Jen K, I think. They were just talking to her, and she just stood there. Guys, I'm going to go check on Pam, I said. I walked over, and the girls looked at me. Hey, Pam. She was silent, and Becky just mouthed, Katie. If it's okay with you, I'll stay with Pam, I said. I looked over at my group, and Blaine caught my eye. I'll meet up with you guys later, I called out, and Blaine and the group nodded, saying they would see me there, and loaded on. Becky and the others loaded up too, and the first group of people left. I turned to Pam. If you want to stay here, I'll stay. If you want to get on the train, I'll go. Either way, let's just be stuck in this shit together. Right now. We'd let another round of shuttle go by, and when she was ready, we stepped on. It was quiet between the two of us. It wasn't about talking. Pam and Katie were best friends, and whatever was going on with Katie had now spilled over, and the only thing I could think of doing at that moment was just trying to be there for Pam. I'm here, and I won't leave unless you want me to, I said as we stood on the shuttle. She grabbed my hand, and we stood quiet the entire way there. When we got there, we went inside and just walked around. It was very loud, very colorful, and very much a video gamer dream. Pam and I walked through the exhibit, going through all the floors, but not playing anything. We didn't talk much, but I told Pam when she was ready, I would be all ears. She nodded, and we kept walking, and after a while we ran back into Becky and others, and Pam squeezed my hand. "Thanks, Matt. I'm going to go with them if that's okay," she said, turning to me. "Of course, Pam. Let me know if I can help it later." Pam smiled and walked off with Becky and her group, and I turned the corner and immediately found Blaine in my group rather quickly. "Everything okay?" Blaine asked. "I don't know, but I think it was good I stayed back," I said. We went through the exhibit, playing video games and hanging out. Meg and I still primarily spent our time together as we walked around and played. With a bit of time to spare, we all made it back to the resort. Blaine and I walking Meg, Corey, and Aaron back to their rooms and making it back for one final night of Radio Disney with Michael and Lawrence. Before we got ready for bed, we snapped a photo of the group. And they all got involved in my journal entry that night, because by then, I wasn't able to keep track of days or dates straight. One more night of polishing off some soda and Radio Disney, and we turned in for the evening. We knew that at least one foreboding thing was waiting for us. That damn mouse. Try and enjoy the here and now. The future will take care of itself somehow. 6:30 a.m. Disney World. You know the drill. Hello, boys and girls, and boom goes the receiver. Lawrence got to it first. Each of us had been given a chance to silence that goddamn mouse. "Gentlemen, it's time," he said. We all swung out of bed, packing our bags. We were all checking out after breakfast and loading up our stuff in the buses that will drive us to the airport. The plan was one final breakfast, then off to the Magic Kingdom for one final partial day at the parks, of which I brought down the A&W with me to toast a final breakfast. Once we were all loaded up and on our way, our group grew for the final day. Emily, Diana, Kate, and Way joined our group for our final run, and Diana snapped a photo of our collective, along with some stragglers, as we climbed on a bench. Diana skipped arm in arm with Xandar, who sang the Flintstones theme song in a foreign language and continued to sing "It's a Small World." Emily and I were complimented on our photo at the castle and did a bit of reenactment for another photo while we stood around trying to figure out the next spot we were going to go. After a few rides and walking, Diana and some of the others in the group departed, but we knew we would see them when it came time to leave. We made our way through the park, last rides were ridden, and last-minute souvenirs were bought. Meg thanked me for the rose. Corey had given it to her the night before, when they got back from Disney Quest, and I smiled. "Just something for you to take home and something to show you how much fun I had with you here," I said. We walked through the park, still holding hands and being whatever it was tour had unlocked. But it was getting close to time to go. We did one more activity, the extraterrestrial alien encounter, a part ride, part scary attraction about an alien that gets loose and starts eating people. Definitely something right up my alley, and I sat between Meg and Emily during the ride, and we screamed along as we got sprayed as the alien ate its victims. Afternoon approached, and we all made our way to the buses, where the choir would get on one and the band and orchestra the other. Everyone was taking last-minute pictures, and Corey looked over at me and Meg. "Do you guys want a picture before we leave?" Corey asked. "Yeah," we replied. Meg and I put our arms around each other, and Corey got ready to take a photo. "One last kiss?" I asked, pressing my luck. Meg smiled. We kissed. And that was the photo Corey took. Corey handed me my camera, and I smiled, and I walked the girls to their bus. I climbed on the choir bus, and Emily waved at me to sit next to her. I smiled. She sat in the aisle with me by the window. And we started talking about the tour, mentioning how we missed out on a lot of time together, but still got the last part of the day in. Suddenly, we saw Corey run on the bus and up to me, holding something in her hand. This is from Meg. She wanted you to have it before we got to the airport. She said she'll see you there. Bye, guys. And with that, she skipped off the bus, having handed me a little blue bag. I looked out the window and watched Corey and Meg climb back on their bus, both waving. I reached into the bag and there was a small box. Written on top was a message. Matt, you have made this a fantastic tour. All my love, Meg. What is it? Emily asked. I opened the box and moved the tissue paper aside and smiled. I pulled out from the box a small snow globe. A snow globe I still keep on my desk. Jiminy Cricket. And with that, 4.5/5 days in Disney World come to an end. And I got to spend it with some of the coolest people ever. And then high school just isn't the same afterward. But that's next week. Anyway, thanks for coming around for the ride again. We are almost done with sophomore year, I think. And then we got 2 years to go. I appreciate anybody who's watching this, either been sticking with it since the beginning or jumping in new, or jumped off and then jumped back, or whatever it is. Or you're just a very dedicated 4 people that watch these videos 2 or 3 times to laugh. But anyway, until next week, when I sit here in my chair in my 80s garb with dogs hanging out and sounds of nostalgia and just trying to stay out of Arizona heat. Couple more things. Be good to yourself. And keep on rolling.